In 1923, a small group of the wealthiest men in America met at a hotel in Chicago. Between them, they controlled more money than the United States Treasury. Within 25 years, most of them were broke, disgraced, or dead by their own hand. Here's the strange part. The crash that followed 6 years later has nothing to do with why. Historians have picked apart every detail of what happened to these men, and almost all of them miss the real cause. It wasn't the market, it wasn't bad luck. It was a mistake so quiet, so ordinary looking, that most people alive today are making the exact same one, right now without knowing it. If wealth were simply about making the right decisions, the smartest people would always end up the richest. But they don't. Some of history's most brilliant minds have gone bankrupt. People with ordinary intelligence have built fortunes that lasted generations. Something else is happening beneath the surface of every financial success and failure, something the wealthy rarely explain, possibly because most of them have never had to put it into words. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly what that hotel room in Chicago got wrong, but the answer isn't where you'd expect to find it. Ask most people how to get rich, and they'll describe some version of the same idea. Work hard, save consistently, avoid unnecessary risk, let time do the rest. It sounds responsible, it sounds true. For a modest, stable life, it often works, but it is not how great fortunes are built, and it is definitely not how they survive. Consider Isaac Newton, one of the most brilliant minds in human history. In 1720, he invested in the South Sea Company, watched the price climb, and sold for a healthy profit. Then he watched the stock keep rising without him. Unable to resist, he bought back in near the top. When the bubble collapsed, he lost a fortune equivalent to years of his salary as master of the Royal Mint. He later admitted he could calculate the motion of the heavens, but not the madness of men. Here's what almost everyone misses about that story. Newton wasn't undone by a lack of intelligence. He was undone by something that has nothing to do with intelligence at all, something that operates on a completely different axis, one most people never think to check. There's a question almost no one asks before making a financial decision, and it isn't, how much could I gain? To understand why that question matters, picture two entrepreneurs. The first pours his entire savings into one business idea. If it works, he's wealthy. If it fails, he starts over from nothing. The second spreads smaller amounts across 10 different ventures, expecting most of them to collapse completely. When just one succeeds, it doesn't merely cover the losses from the other 9, it multiplies his capital many times over. Both entrepreneurs might be equally talented, both might work equally hard. Only one of them has built something that survives being wrong 9 times out of 10. But that's only half the story, because this same pattern, quietly, almost invisibly, shows up again and again, across centuries, across industries, in the biography of nearly every fortune that has lasted more than one generation. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If this pattern is so consistent, why doesn't everyone follow it? Warren Buffett has spent decades explaining his financial philosophy in plain language, and one idea keeps resurfacing in his letters to shareholders. His obsession isn't primarily with maximizing returns, it's with avoiding permanent, irreversible loss. The first rule, he said, is not to lose money. The second rule is to remember the first. That sounds almost too simple to explain one of history's greatest fortunes. Then look at the math, and the simplicity turns unsettling. A portfolio that loses 50% needs to gain 100% just to break even. A person who goes fully bankrupt doesn't get a second attempt at the same capital. They rebuild from zero. Avoiding catastrophic loss matters more than chasing spectacular gains for one brutal reason: ruin removes you from the game entirely. The rich don't necessarily take fewer risks than everyone else. Often they take more. But it's a very specific kind of risk, one where the potential loss is limited and known, while the potential gain is open-ended and unpredictable. That single distinction is starting to look like more than a coincidence, and a mathematician working on an entirely unrelated problem was about to prove it wasn't one. In the mid-20th century, a scientist named John Kelly Jr., working at Bell Labs, developed a formula meant to solve something that had nothing to do with personal wealth: how to optimize signal transmission over noisy telephone lines. Then something strange happened. Gamblers and investors discovered his math solved a much older problem: how much of your money you should ever risk on a single bet, even when you're fairly confident about. The Kelly criterion revealed something counterintuitive. Betting too little on a good opportunity wastes it, but betting too much on even a great opportunity, when you're right about most of the time, will eventually destroy you, because a single oversized loss can erase years of gains in one stroke. This is the moment the pattern stops looking like folk wisdom and starts looking like law. Old money behaves differently from new money for exactly this reason. New wealth tends to concentrate: one business, one stock, one bet, ridden as far as it will go. Old wealth tends to spread itself thin on purpose, protecting its ability to keep playing the game across decades, sometimes centuries, through wars, depressions, and currency collapses. But if the math is this clear, why doesn't almost no one actually live this way? Here's the twist most people never see coming. The instinct that keeps ordinary households financially stuck isn't recklessness, it's caution, applied in exactly the wrong place. Many people avoid investing because they fear losing money, so they keep their savings in a low-interest account, where inflation guarantees a slow, invisible loss every single year. At the same time, those same people will sometimes take enormous, concentrated risks elsewhere: an entire paycheck on a whim, an unexamined loan, a major purchase decided under emotional pressure. In other words, cautious exactly where caution costs the most, and reckless exactly where recklessness costs the most. It's the precise inverse of how lasting wealth behaves, and once you see it, you can't unsee it, not in your own habits and not in the story of that hotel room in Chicago, where several of the smartest financiers alive had built extraordinary success on top of exactly one point of failure. That failure was about to have a name. It just took another 100 years and one European banking family to reveal what it looked like when someone got it right instead. The Rothschild banking family, expanding across Europe in the early 19th century, famously spread its operations across multiple countries rather than concentrating everything in one capital. On the surface, this looked like ambition. Underneath, it was insurance. A war, a revolution, or a currency collapse in any single country could not destroy the entire structure because no single country held all of it. The family had built a financial organism that could lose a limb and keep walking. Compare that to the thousands of merchant fortunes built on one port, one trade route, one relationship with a single monarch. When that one point of failure failed, and eventually it almost always did, there was nothing left to fall back on. The money hadn't vanished because the founders were foolish. It vanished because the fortune had exactly one heartbeat, and something eventually stopped it. This is the part almost everyone studying the wealthy misses. The goal was never simply to grow the pile of money as fast as possible. The goal was making sure no single event, however catastrophic, could bring the whole structure down at once. That idea didn't stay confined to banking families. It became the invisible blueprint behind entire industries. The insurance business exists because of it, collecting many small, predictable payments to protect against a small number of catastrophic losses. Diversified index investing exists because of it, accepting the average return of thousands of companies rather than betting everything on being right about one. Pharmaceutical research runs on it too. Companies fund hundreds of experimental drugs, expecting most to fail, because the handful that succeed can fund an entire corporation for decades. Each of these industries is, at its core, a machine built around the same principle that quietly ruined men like Newton and quietly built dynasties like the Rothschilds. Genius was never the deciding factor. Return to that hotel room in Chicago, 1923. The men gathered there weren't disciplined, they weren't intelligent. Several were among the most capable financiers of their generation. What most of them lacked wasn't insight or effort or ambition. It was architecture, a structure built to survive being wrong. A single collapse, one bad year, one unexpected shift in the world was enough to unravel decades of success because their success had never been built to absorb a wound. It had been built to be right indefinitely, forever, and nothing built that way lasts. The rich, across history, culture, and circumstance, converge again and again on the same quiet understanding. Wealth isn't primarily created by knowing the right answer. It's preserved by building a life that can absorb being wrong over and over again without ever being destroyed by it. Here is why that's harder than it sounds. Spreading your resources across many small, controlled risks means accepting failure constantly, in public, for years. It means watching 9 ventures fail while waiting for a 10th to succeed, while a single concentrated bet somewhere else appears to be making someone else rich overnight. Concentrated bets are seductive precisely because they promise a fast, singular story, the one trade, the one business that changes everything by tomorrow. Resilience offers no such story. It offers something quieter, still being solvent, still in the game 20 years after the people who took the dramatic all-in bet have already been wiped out and forgotten. This changes everything about how the question should be framed. Not intelligence, not luck, not even discipline exactly. The deliberate design of a life where small failures are expected, survivable, and ultimately irrelevant, so that the rare, enormous success has time and room to happen. If there's one thing worth taking from this, it isn't a stock tip. It's a single sentence worth asking before every financial decision you make for the rest of your life. Not how much could I gain, but what happens to me if I'm wrong. The people still standing decades from now won't be the ones who were right the most often. They'll be the ones who built a life that could survive being wrong and simply refuse to leave the table. If this changed how you think about money, consider subscribing. There's more of this kind of thinking ahead. And here's the question worth sitting with long after this video ends. In your own financial life, where are you being cautious in exactly the wrong place and reckless in exactly the wrong place at the very same time?